Welcome back to Following Note on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 169 of Following Note on, and we are in chapters 44 through 48, finishing part 4 of The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. Paul, how are you?
I know I say I'm fantastic every week, but this is one of those weeks that just makes me so grateful for this podcast. So grateful just for the time to get to talk with you guys because man, these are some fantastic chapters and ending of just a fantastic part. Eliot mentioned kind of kicking off the Sander Lynch, and I think he hit the nail right on the head there. That absolutely just like so it gets really exciting really quick. I'll leave it at that.
We do have we have several different exciting things in several different avenues happening at the same time, which I feel like is the definition of um uh, I wonder if it was this book that really established Brandon Sanderson with his Sanderlanche kind of like tag, because um the first anyway. Ellie, how are you?
I am also doing well. I feel like I'm in the same boat as Paul, and that things are really starting to move here, and I enjoy all of the build up chapters in our books and kind of dissecting those with these guys. But these are kind of the sections of the book where I need our discussions with you
Right.
guys to just help me process what is going on, both in a sense of we're starting to Sanderlanche, and so things are going fast, and there's things that I know I've missed that you guys will help me notice. But then there's other things that just happen, and you're like, I can't stop to process that right now because I got to keep reading. And so now is my moment to attempt to go back and process it all with you guys.
Sounds good. Let's roll intro, and then let's start discussing the end of part 4 of The Well of Ascension. Elliot, do you want to give us a quick summary, if you can, of what happens here?
I'm gonna blaze through this because a ton happens here, and we're gonna get into all of it. And there's some big drops, spoilers. I'm not even gonna hit any of those. I'm just gonna hit some of the big events here. Let's see. Vin has kind of disappeared. She and Zane wrecked the house of Set, and then she kind of goes and hides. Ellen comes to find her. Tyndall and Sazed are still doing more research, at least in the early chapters of this section. Let's see, Zane shows up and attempts to kill Vin, and in reality, the opposite happens. Vin dispatches him with a lot to talk about in that scene, which we will get to.
It's like
And then
7 different things.
the yeah, and then our crew, the OG crew, gets back together and decides that they need to send Vin and Elend away so they don't fall um, victim to the destruction that we feel like is headed our way. So way more in there to unpack, but we're going to get into it all. So that's your brief recap.
Sounds good. I'm going to throw it right back to you, Elliot, because the first thing you have on this outline is finally! Exclamation point. An interesting epigraph. Which one?
Indeed. Indeed. This is so chapter 44, which is the start of our section here. I've kind of gotten into a rhythm in this book of kind of ignoring the epigraphs. They've either been something I know already that says that has already read to me, or so irrelevant that I have no hope of possibly putting any context on it whatsoever. I feel like a lot of other books, the epigraphs like vaguely hint at stuff, and you're like, oh, I wonder what that means. I can't even do that with most of these epigraphs. It's just, it feels so irrelevant. This one, though, chapter 44, not super relevant, but the first one that I read that I was like, Ooh, okay. I'm gonna pause and read that again. I think maybe just because it's rather philosophical, I'll read it for you. But must not even a madman rely on his own mind, his own experience, rather than that of others? It's a single sentence, it's a single question, but one that was like, ooh, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And we'll go down in a massive bunny trail that we probably should not at this point to if I try and dissect all that sentence, but I was I thought it was a really interesting statement about should a madman rely on their own mind? And the statement is kind of from the stance of like, well, that's all anyone has, right? So they got to rely on their own mind. But in the context of a madman, it seems like the obvious answer to me is, well, no, actually. A madman is the perfect example of someone who should not rely on their own experience and should lean on the perspectives of others. And I feel like I could relate this maybe to a few of our characters in this story. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of ways we could go with this. Bottom line, it was philosophical and I liked it.
Sounds good. I also, I was listening to this. I listened to this twice, and one of the times I was listening to it on my way home from work. So I did, while you were reading that, my brain did the location association thing that you do with when you hear something or
Yep.
like a song or, or read something that you've read before in a specific location, maybe on like a vacation, and then you think of that. Anyway, so now my brain is driving home from work. I'm gonna push back on you on the boring epigraphs thing for a second, because you said, what did you say? You said it was either something Sazed had already read to me, or it was so far out of context that I have no hope of getting it. I think that's interesting, and I would challenge you on both of those claims on if they're actually true. And I will leave it at that.
I I like that you're saying that and that it gives me hope for where we're going because I was getting a little disappointed by the epigraphs to the point where, like I said, I'll admit I've kind of gotten into a rhythm of not paying attention to them. I read them fast and I move on, and it's just, oh, they're discussing Quan and Elendi and the Hero of Ages and the Well of Ascension, all these names. I don't know who is who. If I go back and maybe do the work of reading them all back to back, maybe I could start putting together some pieces. But some of them are definitely excerpts of stuff Sazed has already read to us. And so I have crossed those off as, oh, yep, I already know that. And so, yeah, I'm glad to hear there's maybe more that I'm missing, but I'm definitely missing it.
I think there are several listeners that are enjoying what you just said, and Paul is one of them. So we can we can move on before I give too much away. At the beginning of chapter 44, the crew has quickly come to the conclusion that our doom is upon us, because based on what happened in chapter 43, Set appears to be full retreating. He has left the city. His army is packing up to leave, and I believe it's Clubs and Dachshund who are having a discussion, or Ham? No, Clubs and Ham are quickly come to the conclusion of the war is about to start, because if Set leaves, then Clubs is saying all Straff has to do now is back up, let the Koloss attack, and then come in to be the victor after the Koloss attack. So they've fairly quickly resolved that we're in trouble. We're in big trouble for the first time since like the beginning of this book when they first showed up. So what'd you guys think of that conclusion?
So to look at this, I think we actually need to talk about something that we didn't really talk about in our last episode, right? Zane and Van go and basically just run through the ranks of Set's stronghold, or his camp, I don't actually know what he's in. I'm assuming it's a camp. They're like outside of Luthadel.
No, it's
Um,
it's the Keep Hastings. It's inside Luthadel.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Okay. So they run through it. They make pretty quick work of the whole thing and realize Set doesn't have any more Allomancers. He doesn't have any more, and he's there's kind of the front of like all these leaders have Allomancers. They just keep them secret because that's where a lot of the strength of an Allomancer can come. Is it seems like just maybe a normal soldier, but they're a coin shot or a thug or whatever, That's a lot of the strength of them. But they find out by forcing it. One, there was this little bit of suspicion that maybe Set is an Allomancer or Mistborn or something like that, and he's hiding it as this guise of being like paralyzed, right? They quickly rule out that none of that is the case. He is not an Allomancer, and he has no Allomancers there to protect him.
Right.
And I mean, like Set's kind of not given much of a choice there. He does start to, we see where he begins to withdraw, but it's because it's basically been outed that he has no legitimate power to overthrow anything here. He was not elected to lead, and he has no serious force. Not really. His Allomancers were expended. It sounded like earlier in our story, and that was it. That was all he had. So, we do see that. We also, I mean, just for the sake that I think we should talk about it, no longer relating to that point of him withdrawing, is Vin and Zane. They don't kill Set. They don't kill Set, and they don't kill Set's son, who stands up in front of them, knowing he's powerless against them. He stands up for his father, which I think is something to note. So, last episode we talked a little bit about Zane and Straff Venture, and how if you were to take everything that you could have in a toxic father-son relationship, it's probably that relationship, right? And we have compared, or I compared last episode, Straff and Set. They're both bad. They're both like pretty wicked and unfair and all sorts of things, right? And while that is still true, there is a bit of a difference I think that we see here. I don't think we would see maybe. So we see Set's son step out really from a place of like probably love for his father and
Right.
like care for his father, right? I don't think we would see that with Straff's children. Zane seems to be mostly. I mean, I can't fully say he's loyal to Straff because he does a lot of things that he's not supposed to do. He's supposed to kill Vin, right? And he doesn't do that, and other things as well. He often tries to poison him. But there is some sense of loyalty or servitude there, but it's not the same as this. We are seeing a son who cares for his father and is like putting himself in harm's way to try and protect him. And it was kind of a bit moving, kind of a bit touching, and I think a bit of a testament maybe to Set having a redeeming quality. Maybe we I mean, I'll say that lightly because we see where he deliberately voices he does not care about his daughter or like all sorts of stuff, right? So that's not me going too far and saying like, oh, he's a pretty good figure and a good dad and stuff. I don't know, but there's at least, I think we're shown at least a difference in character between Straff and Set, which I think is neat to point out. But all that being said, if y'all have other thoughts on that, you're welcome to chime in. That's my soapbox, I guess, there about that scene and about this character. So,
Should we hold a tournament of worst parent in the Cosmere?
oh gosh, no, we should not. To answer your question,
That's a great comparison between Set and Venture. Straff Venture. I didn't think of it in that sense, but now that you lay that out, Paul, that actually really helps me process my emotions that I was feeling in this scene because the where I was at as I'm watching Vin bear down on the crippled Set and his son steps in the way, like all the emotions rise up as, oh my goodness, Vin needs to not do this. It felt very much like Anakin Skywalker to me of this is the moment where she will fall to the dark side if she kills this youngling. And of course, we know the path that Anakin Skywalker went down.
Spoilers.
Then, if you haven't seen Star Wars, go do that. Stop listening to this podcast. Go do that, and then come back. The
It only came out in 2005. You got to give plenty of time to
Yeah.
let them
It's
watch
only
it.
been like
Only been 18 years.
18 years or so. Yeah, that's it.
for the times. Then does not fall to the dark side. She does not kill the boy in front of her to get to Set, and that felt like a very emotional. Like I cheered in that moment, and Paul, the context of Straff Venture and Zane helps me kind of think why I felt like that. Because if it was Straff Venture in that, I don't think I would have.
Right.
I cheered in that moment. I would have said, "Vin, you need to take him out no matter what it takes." And so that is a big differentiator in between Set and Straff Venture. It's the love that his son has for him in that moment. I didn't realize that was the key part of that, but you're absolutely right. It was, and that act, not words, but the act of his son standing in front of a very violent Mistborn coming through speaks volumes. That speaks a lot.
Not once, but twice. He
Yeah.
Vin picks him up and throws him, gets to Set, and then after the conversation with Set, he gets back up and stands between Set and Vin again. So at the beginning of, or at the end of 44, Vin is hiding away in an old hideout. I'm not sure if it's the old hideout that we meet her in chapter 2 of Mistborn, or if it's just old hideout that she knows of, but she's in this like cubby hole that she can spy on the street from. And there's a couple key things in the conversation with Vin and Elend, or Sir's, well, or Sir is there as well. But we can talk about that later. What did you guys get from this Elend and Vin conversation?
I got quite a lot, and I'm not even quite sure how to talk about it. It was a rather emotional one.
Yeah. Elend unknowingly saves his relationship with Vin through one line of dialogue that Vin then references later for herself. Because later in chapter 47, she's about to leave with Zane. Zane's about to win, and Vin realizes I've made the wrong decision because Zane will never trust me, and Elend has always trusted me. Doesn't matter what I do. Make your decisions, and I'll support you, is what Elend says. And that carries such weight for Vin through these chapters that it saves their relationship, and what Vin ends up deciding in chapter or 3 chapters later.
I noticed too all the references to Kelsier throughout these chapters. I think it's primarily in Vin's head.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely a thing that not just Vin, but a lot of the crew come back to. Kelsier was such a leader for all of them. And I think kind of cemented by his death as well. He's very much an inspiration to all of them. Although in this one scene though, where Ellen finds Vin in the hideout, Vin is worried. She's comparing herself to Kelsier in a negative way, actually,
Yeah.
in this scene, in that she's worried that she's become the calloused killer that Kelsier was. That was that was probably the biggest flaw that I think we poked on in the first book was Kelsier had a lot of really admirable traits. His disregard for human life, especially that of non-ska,
Right.
was worrying at times. And Vin picks up on it too. And in this moment, she goes, "Oh no, I've become Kelsier. I just murdered all of those people to achieve my ends. Have I become Kelsier?"
Yeah. I I think the crew specifically have very few qualms with Kelsier in book one, but the further away they get from Kelsier, they realize more flaws with him and where he may have made some rash decisions. Because I, I I think it's in last episode, Vin has a mental dialogue of what would Kelsier do in this situation, and she tells herself, well, Kelsier wouldn't have gotten this in this situation to start with because he would have slit both Straff and Set's throats the first day they walked up to Luthadel. Like that, he has zero patience for specifically royal blood. That if you're threatening Luthadel, he's going to take any steps he can to protect that, and however many kills he gets along the way is just a bonus. So it's also isn't this it's in this episode where she thinks to herself, if I hadn't spared Goradel's life, I wouldn't have overthrown the Lord Ruler. She walks into Cretic Shaw, and what do you guys think of that scene? She walks into Cretic Shaw and um begins to wonder, why am I here? You guys remember this? And then she walks away. Like, it was kind of a strange scene. So I just looked it up. It is chapter 46, where Vin goes into Cretic Shaw to that small building where the Lord Ruler hung out. And I looked it up on the Coppermind, and this is what it says. Vin goes to the secret chamber within Cretic Shaw where the Lord Ruler spent his time. She isn't sure why she went there, however, and leaves. So what do you guys, I mean, there's not much more to it in the book, so what do you guys think of it?
I thought we were heading for some kind of epic reveal. It was Vin returns to the scene of epic events in the last book. Surely she's gonna uncover some clue that they missed, or they've all been avoiding this place because they're scared of it. And Vin has this giant revelation when she walks into the room. And the entire scene was literally as the Coppermind describes it. She walks in, hears loud thumping in her head, and is like, "This is odd. I'm leaving." I was very sure we were headed for something way bigger than that, and it ended up being nothing. Unless the thumping is important. That was maybe the key part of that, or I have no idea, but that was the difference. The only bit of note I got out of that was she hears the the pounding in her head, which she assumes is the well of Ascension, and when she goes into Cretic Shaw, she hears the sound more, which I couldn't tell if that was just her going crazy and or focusing on it, or if that had something to do with where she physically is. I couldn't tell.
Hmm. Any thoughts before I read a quick quote from the passage? Oh,
No thoughts that I can share yet. I do, I mean, I do think it's interesting. Um, no major thoughts on Cretic Shaw, but yeah, all in all, you can go ahead and read. You can go ahead and read.
okay. So somebody in our Discord actually pointed this out to me. So let me read it. She stepped into the small building within a building. It had only one room. The floor had been torn up by Elend's crews searching for the ATM. The walls were still hung, however, with the trappings the Lord Ruler had left behind. She raised her lantern, looking at them. Rugs, furs, a small wooden flute. The things of his people, the Terrace people, from 1,000 years before. Why had he built his new city of Luthadel here, to the south, when his homeland, and the Well of Ascension itself, had been to the north? Anything catch your ears?
My ears. Just
I mean,
some funky flute music, that's all.
yeah, the flute seems a little out of place, or at least oddly specific.
I also thought that when it was pointed out to me by one of our Discord members. And I think I want to talk about it under a Stormlight spoiler. So let's pause on that unless you guys said anything else. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Back up to the Vin and Ellen scene. I also want to read something else. When Ellen finds Vin in the hideout, Ellen's kind of lost for words of how to comfort her after she's just made a wreck of Set's men. And this is chapter 44. He could finally see what was in her fingers. It was her earring, the simple bronze stud that she always wore. She looked down at it, twisting it between her fingers. "Did I ever tell you how I got this?" she asked. He shook his head. "My mother gave it to me," she said. "I don't remember it happening. Breen told me about it." "My mother. She heard voices sometimes. She killed my baby sister, slaughtered her, and that same day she gave me this, one of her own earrings, as if choosing me over my sister." I'm not going to ask you, Paul, but Eliot, did you catch anything?
Yeah, two things specifically. One maybe is simpler, so I'll start there. I'm really glad you brought this up because early on I keyed in on Vin's earring.
Mm-hmm.
After learning a bit about feruchemy going into this, and then fairly early on in this book, we get specifically told that her earring is bronze. And I've I've learned enough Mistborn magic to know that if I get told that a metal is something specific, that it could very well be important. So I theorized early on that that was going to be potentially playing into our magic systems. Now, something something worth mentioning that I think we didn't have time to cover on the podcast, but it was like 4 or 5 episodes ago now. We actually did see Sazed use a bronze metal mind, and
Okay.
it gets just it gets we get told that he uses it to stay awake. I think, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering it correctly,
Yeah.
that the the ability that he stores in his bronze is awakeness, that he can stay awake for long periods of times by drawing on his bronze stores. Of course, the converse of that being, I assume he has to sleep for days to store up his awakeness in his bronze. When does that guy have time for all that stuff, by the way?
That's a
Like,
great
that's got to be
question.
really time consuming. Like, yeah.
Need to go
Anyway,
sleep for a month. Don't mind me.
and, and all the other stuff he's got to do. Like, I got to go be really heavy for a long time so that I can sometimes be light. And I got to go
Super
forget a bunch of
frail.
stuff so that I
Yeah.
can remember it. Like, take a lot of time. Sorry. Anyway, that led me down the path of I was ready to toss out my theories about her bronze earring being related to feruchemy because that's not the ability I was expecting for her to whip out. Was she's got this bronze earring from her mother that helps her stay awake. So yeah, glad you brought this up because bronze earring is back. It I think is not magically as important as I thought it was.
Okay.
That's thought train number one. thought train number 2, which I had a lot of these thoughts as I was reading, but I don't think they all quite fell into place and aligned until you read that just now. We've heard the story before of Vin's mother killing her Vin's baby sister. And we've chalked that up to, oh my gosh, she must have been a psychopath. We're glad Vin escaped that. I now, though, as you read that, am starting to draw some potential parallels. But specifically, you mentioned in there that there's reference to Vin's mother hearing voices in her head.
Yes.
There is another person who hears voices in their head telling them to kill things.
Hmm.
And and that other person with a specific voice in their head that says kill things does not say to kill Vin. There seems to be a preference for Vin, a friendliness. I It's not the right word. I don't know if I can make that assumption, but a specific lack of animosity towards Vin from this voice in Zane's head.
Yeah.
Is Vin's mother hearing the same voice? And is that what drove her to kill the baby and show maybe the earring is just a sign of affection or acceptance of Vin? Thought Train 2.
Yeah, I wish I didn't know the answer to this one so I could talk to you about it, but I do, so I can't. Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. I'm glad you picked up on what I was leading you to pick up on. Any non-spoiler thoughts over there, Paul?
Yeah, actually. So I will say, honestly, my first read through, I didn't catch like any of this with the earring. Not at all. Like literally, like going through basically the whole series, like didn't catch anything with an earring. Like I was like, oh yeah, she wears an earring. That was kind of the end of it. Never caught it was bronze. Never caught like any further significance with that. I was reading at a casual or quicker pace, and not too deeply, just for enjoyment. Didn't catch on to this at all. So this is neat to me. This is kind of new, and I'm like, wow, like dang, like Brandon really put a lot in here about this, and stuff. So I'm kind of like rediscovering some just like other neat details, I guess, that are kind of in this story. And as far as like this, another thing I never connected that, like later we see Zane say, like, Vin, you're the only one that the voice is like quiet around or doesn't
Yeah.
say to kill, right? And I never put together that her mother apparently also had this voice or a similar voice or something. And I don't know, she was the chosen one, if you will.
Hmm.
You know. So uh, my only thoughts are that like this is kind of news to me. Like this is I did read this before but didn't like fully catch all those connections there. Um and man, like he really went to town with that, and I have to say like that is really, I don't know. I don't know what to, well, I kind of know what to make of it, but not fully. So, um, yeah.
Eliot.
This is why I
Yeah.
love the podcast, by the way, is because if I read this on my own, like I'm gonna miss half of this stuff.
Right.
As I obviously shared, I had missed these details and these connections, and this is what we get to, the kind of added bonus that I get to pick up on.
Eliot, when I think it was 4 maybe episodes ago that I just asked you bluntly who else has voices in their head, this was another fish in the ocean that was possible to remember if you could, because we had one other
Yeah.
reference to her mother hearing voices, being mad or whatever.
Unless my copy doesn't have that line.
uh, man, those last 2 quotes that I read, as I was reading them, I was just thinking in my head, this isn't going to be in Eliot's copy. We just have 2 different books straight up. That's just how this is going to go. Okay, we'll get back to voices because it plays a big part of a big-ish part of chapter 47 and the end of chapter 47. But we'll get back there. Sazed and Tindwyl have something very strange go on. But before that happens, Tindwyl and Sazed have a conversation about ancient religions. And Tindwyl's not the first one to confront Sazed about, well, why do you teach all these religions? You know that they can't be, like, they start conflicting with each other. Why are you upholding these old religions if you know at least some of them have to be false, because if others were true, then it would disprove other ones? What did you guys think of this one?
I found this discussion really, really fascinating, actually, because Sazed is such an interesting character. I like him a lot, but I kind of agree with the questions that, like you said, Tindwyl and other characters have questioned him on, which is the whole he teaches all these religions to other people, but as Tindwyl really tries to get at in this scene, he it's not just a scholarly or historical interest in them. It's not he's not just documenting them for the sake of documenting them. He he will not Tindwyl presses him and is like, "Well, surely you don't believe all of these, right?" And Sazed can't really say no. He's like he 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 wants to say yes. I don't know that he quite does, but he seems to have a connection to the religions or a faith in them, to use
Hmm.
that word carefully,
Yeah.
that would seem to contradict itself, and yet he seems to see value in the beliefs themselves, even though they, yes, seem to obviously contradict each other.
Yeah.
And the direction that the conversation goes, I thought was really interesting, and that they start talking about hope. Sazed talks about the fact that, well, all of these religions have value because they bring people hope. And on one hand, I really like that sentiment. I I would agree that belief in higher power or a greater calling or whatever you want to call it absolutely does bring people hope, and it's a foundational like part of who I am. But it's followed up by the immediate question, which is, well, but what if it's a belief in something that's not real? Does hope need to be founded on something real? And Sazed seems to think that, well, just the hope itself is valuable.
Right.
And Tindwyl might be a little more where I fall, which would be, well, but hang on a second, if you're spreading falsehoods just to give people hope, is that right?
Hmm.
Does hope need to be founded on the truth?
If we're
It
having a
it feels like
moral, like, ethical discussion, I would argue yes. Um, but if Sazed's arguing the fact that I'm giving them hope doesn't, regardless of what it's founded on, is valuable. Period. So,
right.
and I can understand that argument, I guess, especially within the context of the Final Empire.
So, what I would say is hope for a time, like for a short instance. Yes, you can give hope without truth. You can say something to bolster a people, right? You're heading off to war, and you're not going to say, "Oh, look, we're going to lose this right now. Like we're just all going to die." Even if that's what you believe, like that, if you are going to inspire hope in the people next to you, you're going to say, "No, we're going to win.
All right, boys, we're going to lose
We're
this
going to
game. I want you
see."
to go out there and lose 6-0. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And so for a time, yes. Like for a short time, yes. That you can do that. You can inspire hope without truth. I believe that you can't do that over a long period of time. If you continually look to something for hope, I mean, well, okay, there are disclaimers, there are caveats to this, but if you completely put your hope in something and look to something for hope that continually is not truthful and lets you down, then you're going to lose hope in that. You're like, there's going to be a point where you don't trust that will lead you to something, there's a lot of ways you could go with that, right? But that's my little 2 cents on it synopsis of kind of a top, like, further away view is, I think, yes, you can instill hope without truth. In a short instance, you can bolster people, say, let's do this, charge straight at them, we've got this, whether or not you believe it, and get people riled up and get people moving. And that probably is good. Like, you probably are increasing your odds in a game, in a fight, whatever, by giving confidence.
Right.
But in the long term, it's different. So
You just go ahead.
I like that thought a lot, Paul. That actually helps me understand the perspective a little bit better. I wish though that Sazed and Tyndall had gotten to finish this conversation, because I don't think they do. They
You're
get
right.
interrupted by what we're going to talk about next. And I'm just like, well, hang on a second. I want to finish the theology discussion that we were about to get into. But no, instead they find something a little
Which is
worrying and confusing. They are going back through their notes. I forget exactly what they're looking for. And Sazed realizes that a section of a page has been torn off, I think is what he finds at first.
mm-hmm.
And then he goes and I think the way it goes down is he's like, well, that's okay. I know what that sentence was because I have it written down over here. And he goes over here. That page has the exact same sentence torn out of it. So now he gets worried. So now he goes to it's fine though. I got it written down over here. Goes to the third place. Same sentence torn out of the page. I feel like, did I imagine this? I feel like one of them, it was even described as like the sentence was in the middle of the page,
Yep.
and the middle of the page
So
is torn out.
here's the details. Tyndall finds the first page and says, "Did you tear this up? That's weird." And Sazed says, "Nope." They go find another page. It has the exact same tear, not only the exact same sentence. They overlay the papers together and they have the same ridge marks on them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Then they find another page that, yep, it's written in the middle because it's only the second half of the rubbing. So it's and in the middle of the page, and that is burned out in the middle or torn out, or I don't remember what they say. Lastly, they go to Sazed's lockbox, unlock the lockbox, and pull out the original rubbing, and that has the same tear that the first two pages have. So then they kind of sit there and stare at each other like, what is going on? Because this is really weird. And then Sazed makes the great observation of, why would someone do this? Why would they know enough to come do something like this and then not know enough to know that I already know what it is because I have it in my copper mind? What do you think?
And it gets even more confusing still. Maybe this is going to tie back to my ignorance of the epigraphs, which I'm going to laugh about a little bit. The confusing, just like you said. But then when he recalls the actual sentence and you read it, it's like, well, hang on a second. That doesn't even sound like an important sentence. Here's what the sentence says. Elendi must not reach the well of ascension, for he must not be allowed to take the power for himself. Okay,
Okay, great.
that seems, I mean, kind of relevant and like not completely worthless, but not, oh my gosh, I must protect this information from you. Important. Like that's kind of a theme of the whole what they're talking about is Elendi's supposed to go to the Well of Ascension. They know there's a big power there. Oh, we have to stop him and make sure he doesn't get it. Okay, nothing earth-shattering about that.
I wish I knew less. I wish I could have a good conversation here. All I'll say is there's something interesting happening with those epigraphs that are maybe intentionally boring, and so you kind of end up skipping over them, like you were talking about, Eliot, at the beginning of this episode.
Well, now I'm like, now my brain's going down like Harry Potter thought trains with like
Okay.
the journal, Tom Riddle's journal.
Oh yeah.
It's like the book is alive and it like writes things to you, or it changes itself. Like is the writing deleting itself and saying, no, you can't read me? Like what is going on here?
Interesting comparison.
I think
Anything?
that's actually the rest of, not to spoil part 5 and part 6, but Voldemort actually it shows that, Straff Venture was actually Voldemort the whole time, and he was leading them astray with rubbing.
If you rearrange
Anyways.
the letters of Straff Venture, it turns into Tom Riddle.
Yeah, exactly.
Little known fact.
Morvallo Riddle or whatever it is.
Anything else on? Okay, yes. Actually, I'm going to answer my own question. So, in another scene with Sazed and Tindwyl, they're having their discussion about they're having a discussion about the Well of Ascension, and Vin walks in or jumps through the window or whatever. Actually, I think this is right after they've discovered the torn out pages, and Tindwyl and Sazed kind of freak out, and but they both bulk up, and then Vin's like, "What am I interrupting? What's going on?" And Sazed's like, "Oh, nope, never mind. Don't worry about it." So then Vin comes in and says, "Sazed, how do you know you're in love?" And Sazed's like, "Girl, I got no idea. You were asking the wrong guy." And then they have a conversation for a couple minutes, and then she leaves. And then Elend walks to the door and says, "Sazed, how do you know you're in love?" And it's a good scene because Elend's like, "We just don't have anything in common." And then Sazed kind of laughs to himself. It's like, "You've got several things in common, buddy." So, what you guys? I thought this scene was very, very good. What did you guys think of it?
I thought it was great for all the same reasons. Good comical value there. Maybe even the best part of it too is they both send Tindwyl out of the room.
Yeah.
But of course, she just listens at the door to the whole thing, and it's like, yeah, very, very teenage drama.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it because it dawns on Sazed that, man, these two kids are way too pure and innocent to die in Luthadel. We need to send these kids away to go get happily married. And it leads him to call a meeting, a secret meeting of the crew without Spook, Tindwyl, Elend, and Vin. And it's from the perspective of Breeze. This is actually my favorite scene that we've read in either Mistborn book. I think it's really well written. I really enjoy that it's from the perspective of Breeze. It's nice and refreshing to get a Breeze point of view chapter. And then we'll talk about the scene in a second, but Sazed has no idea how to hold a secret meeting because he's got two guards outside the door to this random meeting room, and Breeze tells him, "Okay, the first thing that you need to do when holding a secret meeting is not make it obvious that you're holding a secret meeting. So if we're hiding from Elend, get rid of Elend's guards who are going to tell him, and he's going to notice." So, what do you guys think of this?
And on top of that, Sazed has like a single candle in the dark room, and he's like, come here, we gotta talk about this. And Breeze is like, whoa, buddy. If you want to be sneaky, just be casual. Let's just light up the room, have a conversation. Like no one's gonna think that's weird that Breeze and Sazed are sitting down and having a chat and smoking a pipe or whatever it is. And yeah, that was comical. But I also felt a sense of nostalgia
Mm,
almost in this scene back to book one of like this is the original crew getting back together to have another one of these crew meetings where they come up with a plan. And I don't know. I think I agree with you in that this chapter was noticeably well written, and that as I read it, I was harkening back to the final Empire scenes and fondly remembering some of what we read there. Just no Kelsier to lead this one
no Kelsey or
here.
no chalkboard
Oh yeah, no chalkboard. We
What
need a
about the
chalkboard.
classic chalkboard? Yeah.
with just Lord Ruler
Need
written on
Sazed.
it with no input.
Yeah. Well of Ascension? Question mark.
Question mark. All right. Should we talk about Zane
Goodness.
for potentially the last time? As spoilers, he dies.
Okay. Wow.
What?
Yeah, I ruined it for you.
No, not Zane. Ugh.
Okay. There
There's
are
totally a redemption arc in store, right?
so many small details in this scene that I feel like this might be a long episode. Okay,
I
so
think you're right.
yeah, I think I'm right too. Okay. I will quickly summarize the whole scene and then we'll go back and start picking apart things that we want to pick apart. Zane shows up in where are they?
Outside.
No, they're inside.
Are they inside?
They're inside, and
I've always
that's
pictured this
important.
as
Room
outside.
again, right?
I think they're in like my brain puts them in like a ska slum, just like this random attic somewhere. But I don't think that's true. It's important that they're inside because of what the mist does later.
It's isn't it Vin's bedroom? I thought it was
Is
Vin's
it?
bedroom.
I don't think so. I don't think it's in Keep Venture, but maybe it is. I don't know. They're in room A, and Zane almost persuades Vin to go with him. She says, "Yep, I'll go with you," and then immediately decides, "Nope, that's the wrong decision." And then Zane attacks her. Fight back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, Tensoon is not, or Sir is not on Vin's side. He's on Zane's side. Or Sir is the hidden Khandra, and his actual name is Tensoon. But the relationship that Vin and Tensoon have nurtured together over this last book is real because Tensoon actually ends up being sympathetic towards Vin. Doesn't give Vin the ATM in his shoulder that she knows is there. Does eventually get to overpower him with a Duralium push of emotions, and then gets control of his body, which will come back later. We'll talk about that later.
Following, yeah.
Force pulls Tensoon on top of Zane, stabs Tensoon, I think, pulls the ATM out, swallows the ATM. Oops, it's not actually ATM, it's lead. I don't actually have ATM, even though I thought I did, but then I didn't, so now I don't. And Zane is so...
I'm following.
Yep. Good. Nodon or me?
Yeah, both.
Both? Okay, good. Okay, so Zane is so overconfident that he starts walking towards Vin, saying that was the tiniest little scrape of ATM over this big lead ball. You should have checked that because you're stupid. And then Vin's the chosen one and decides ATM doesn't actually matter and I can kill you anyway. So he then goes to stab her. She's like, I'm just not even going to think about what I'm going to do in the future. That way you can't know because I don't know. And that beats ATM, I guess. So which we'll talk about.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then
I'll comment on that in a minute.
So then she gets the better of Zane, stabs him in the windpipe, and then Zane falls into the mist, which during this whole thing, the mist has been rising in the room, which is important. But so the mist like comes into the room with Zane, but then it also Vin notices that it's like being repelled by Zane. And it like keeps pouring into the room, and Zane falls into the mist and dies. At the end of the chapter, we actually get a Zane point of view that the voice never told me to kill you. You were supposed to save me. Oh, by the way, Zane has a spike in his chest. That was revealed to us. And then the voice in Zane's head says, of course I never told you to kill her. And the funny thing is, you were never insane. End of scene.
You even missed one.
Did I miss one?
We learned that not only does Zane know about, he has duralumin.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one, too. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I did forget a big reveal. There's too many of them. What, 6, 7? Okay.
There is a lot. in
Which
this
one first,
part.
gentlemen?
Okay, so I would say first let's talk about Or/Tensoon.
Okay.
Because that's a question that was kind of the big question throughout this story that we kind of dropped for a little bit, which I think is a good, just, writing strategy to kind of drop that ball a little bit so you're not actively super suspicious and then reveal it, And I'm curious to know from Eliot, actually, what your thoughts were on that reveal, on Orsur being the planted Khandra, if you will. Paper, it makes a lot of sense, and I liked it personally because, like, you're suspicious of all these characters. Who's a Khandra? Well, we're talking to the Khandra, but we thought it was a second one, So it is really sneaky there, really, like, yeah, very covert. But I'm curious to know. Excuse me. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that reveal.
I was rather surprised. I talked in, I think, our wrap up episode of Final Empire about how I determine whether I like plot twists or I don't like plot twists. Specifically, we were talking about Kelsier and his
Mm-hmm.
whole "oh, I intended to die this whole time" plot twist. And I actually didn't like that one a little bit, the Kelsier one, because it didn't feel discoverable.
Right.
And you guys told me, hey, go back and read the book again, and maybe you'll feel otherwise, which I have, of course, have yet to do. So maybe I'll recant that. But all that to say, this one I think I liked in that this is something you absolutely could have caught on to, I think. I just did not at all. This caught me completely off guard. And I was preparing to be upset because I feel like we had checked off pretty much everybody from the list. We had alibis from everybody. And so I was waiting for oh, but wait, it's actually Breeze because of this thing you could have never known about.
Right.
It wasn't that at all. It was a very logical, very explainable, oh yeah, that Khandra, who you didn't really like at the beginning of this book, but you've grown to like him because he started to build a relationship with Vin. He started to open up. He started to help her. Wait, that wasn't Orser, at least not after a certain point in there. So that was well delivered and makes perfect sense. I think I dismissed it in my head because for some reason I assumed that all the Khandra are friends.
I
Like
also assumed
it,
they're all on the same team. Yeah, I assumed that as well.
right. It did not occur to me that Khandra A would kill Khandra B. That they would, yeah, they seem to be like the in the shadows guys that know more than everybody else. They're all on the same team and they're just kind of laughing at everybody else. So it didn't even occur to me that the Khandra would have killed the other Khandra. But of course, now when you think back on it, the contract is everything for them, right? So
Right.
if the holder of the contract orders Khandra to kill other Khandra, he's probably going to do it.
Right. I mean, that raises a whole host of questions on how far can the contract go, because
Yeah.
the whole reason why they all follow the contract is so that they don't get subjugated by Mistborn again. Figure all that's been slowly revealed to us over this part. So, but then if you order a Khandra to kill all the other Khandra, then why are you valuing the contract at that point? Like, you know, there's a whole host of questions to be asked there. But yes, I
And it's specifically stated that Khandra won't kill humans.
right.
Like you can't order the Khandra to kill a human. And so, of course, my brain jumped to the conclusion, the assumption that that maybe also means Khandra won't kill other Khandra. I'm sure that's never stated anywhere, and that's me jumping to the wrong conclusion. So cleverly disguised.
Yeah, I agree with. This is a good one. The to Duralaman soothing into being able to control his body was odd to me. I that is a very strange mental picture.
So
It
you're right. It is strange. To me, what's more strange is I don't know. I feel like there's like this ethical dilemma that Tensoon is staring down because he knows Ven kind of knows their secret, but I don't know that she fully knows she can like take control of his body, you know. But she does, and it, the weird dilemma is that she looks at Tensoon and knows he's like he's like inviting it. He's like saying go ahead,
Right.
like non-verbally he's saying go ahead. But yeah, it's just kind of an odd dilemma of like he knows he's not supposed to, but he kind of like signals it, you know. And so I'm like, is it who actually did the dirty work, if you will? Like who did Tensoon? Like I mean, he kind of volunteered himself, but Ven was the one who actually like used the body to like tackle Zane, you know. I don't know. It's a bit murky, I guess, ethically on his like whole contract or whatever and
Right.
stuff. But
Yeah, that's a good question. Did Ensoon break his contract with Zane?
it's like I feel like technically, if you really want to look like logically, I feel like no. If you're being really technical,
Right.
because it's an external force took control of his body forcibly and rammed into Zane. I
Right.
also don't actually know. Isn't the contract? I mean, it's probably to like obey, you know, whoever your contract is with, right? And it's to like not kill anyone. Is that right? Like he can't
Mm-hmm.
kill anyone.
Right.
But I don't know if it says anything about like injuring or tackling or, you know, things like that. It is strictly like you cannot end someone's life, you know. So
Well, and
bit murky there.
not to get too far off context, but Vin has an internal dialogue last episode that Sir broke his contract with me to defend me. Well, turns out he never actually had a contract with you because that's Tensoon, and he never. The contract that you had with Sir is now void because Sir is dead. So anything that Tensoon is doing is not actually contract bound. So yeah. Anyway.
it did feel the whole mind control thing or body control, whatever you want to call it, did feel a little bit like a left turn for the magic system.
Mm-hmm.
And I have full faith in Brandon's magic systems. If there's anything that he does impeccably well, it is magic systems. So I'm very much looking forward to learning more about this. But in the moment, it doesn't make sense. Using emotional manipulation, 'cause she's just
Soothing.
soothing him, right?
Yep.
Yeah. She's soothing him, which, as far as we know, all that does is suppress emotions.
Right.
You can pick specific emotions and suppress them. Why in the world does that give you mind control over another being? I cannot find any logic that links the two of those together.
Isn't it how because or Sir talks about how the what is it, the Lord Ruler was like their father, right?
Mhm.
And my understanding is he kind of created them that way, like to be
Yeah.
controllable. Like they were designed to be controllable, and it's kind of a secret and stuff. That's what I thought I remembered. Maybe that's not
So
entirely true, but like that they were kind of designed to be subservient to the Lord Ruler. So like you're right, logically, if especially if you're looking like person to an like Vin to another person, that makes sense. Like there's no way you could soothe and like suppress emotions to thus then gain control of that person or that person's body. But Conjure, I think we just kind of have to throw that logical thought away a bit and look at like how they were designed. You know, like, and I'm not saying I understand it. I don't think I do, but like, I at least me personally, I'm like, I can rest knowing like the Lord Ruler made them, and that's that's just how it works. That's their secret. He says it's a secret that people aren't supposed to know. As far as
okay.
the actual logical, like hard magic system logic of it, not 100% sure.
Okay. So I think what maybe I'm hearing is potentially it's a back door in the coding.
Right.
It's not necessarily the soothing itself that is giving you the mind control. It's just that is specifically programmed into them
Yeah,
that if you soothe them enough, it gives you control of their mind. So it's
yeah,
almost like that's the Lord Ruler hardwired that into them. Okay,
that's my
potentially.
understanding. Because apparently, it's like not just like Tensoon specifically or something like that. It's
Right.
like that is a Khandra racial like secret.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
Okay.
know?
It's like that's the code word that unlocks the
Yeah,
brainwashed assassin.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Speaking of brainwashed assassin, I'm curious to talk a little bit about Zane. While we're talking about Zane and talking about magic systems, we see he has a spike in his chest. Thoughts?
I This felt like the biggest reveal of all of this, including our conjure reveal and everything. Like all these other things that have been like building up to them were big, but this one just came out of left field. And this one I think left me the most shocked, which was Zane has an Inquisitor spike. I'm assuming it's an Inquisitor spike in his chest. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the full Inquisitor getup because they've got the spikes through their eyes. There's no hiding that.
Mhm.
And so why only one? What power is that granting him? Is he an Inquisitor? Why does he have this? He's already a Mistborn. He's already got Duralumin. He doesn't seem to have any special powers that Vin doesn't. Is he just dead and that brought him back to life? Like, what is going on with the spike?
So it's what you just said is interesting. He's already a Mistborn. So I wonder if the rest of the Inquisitor getup gives you Mistborn powers. And so he
Oh,
only has one that he's missing. And so he gets one, but I don't have no idea what that one would be.
okay.
That
Yeah.
is interesting. I've never thought about that. Honestly, I don't have much to add to this. It's just like a big reveal. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is a big reveal, and I mean, right now it's just a mystery. in my head, it's a huge reveal of like there was more going on with Zane than we may have thought.
Mm-hmm.
It
Do you think
also
all the
could.
Inquisitors have voices? Side note, just about having spikes in you, I guess. Do you think the Inquisitors have voices? Is
That is definitely
that a question of like, you know, is that something that comes with the spike? I guess a voice
that
in your
that
head.
100% came into my head was now we have another string on the conspiracy theory dart or tack board is should we be equating voice in your head that tells you to kill things with having spikes impaled through your body? So we should go ask Marsh.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Are you feeling okay?
Do you
Do you
hear voices?
Heard any,
do
what's the
you
word on the street for you?
do you have an impending desire to kill me right now by chance? Hey,
So also with Zane, other thing which may be a bigger deal, in my opinion, than the spike, is he's told by the voice in his head, "You're not insane." As he's dying, as he is like gasping for breath, he's told, "You were not insane." I don't remember the exact quote, but that's my paraphrasing. You're not insane. You never were. You know.
and
Um,
the reason why I agree with you that this is a bigger reveal than the spike is up until this point, it hasn't been super clear if this is Zane being crazy and just hearing a voice in his head saying, kill him, kill him, kill him. This is somebody talking. That there is somebody talking to Zane in this scene.
This is an interesting thing that I'm going to try and talk carefully around since we're in our non-spoiler section. That is not a shocking reveal to me at all in the slightest. I did not put any significance or importance on that statement whatsoever. That was already my assumption. It might be a revelation to Zane. Maybe Zane thought he was crazy, and now in his dying breath, he learns that he's not. I never had a suspicion at any point that he was. And I'll just simply put it down as voices in people's heads is far from new
Right.
for me as a Cosmere reader at this point. And so when a voice shows up in someone's head, there are a lot of directions I go before insanity.
Mm.
Insanity is maybe like sixth on the list.
Well, I'm looking forward to 1 through 5. But before we get there, anything else on Zane? And then Vin and Elend get married. Just quick side note. And then
mhm.
Sazed sends them off to the Well of Ascension deliberately with deliberate misinformation. He tells them it's on this specific mountain in Terrace. Go north. I'll tell you exactly where it is. And the reason why he says that is just to get him out of the city. He finally convinces Elend, just give up the city for now. You can come back later. We'll hide. We'll be fine. Tells Vin, if you're not here, there'll be way less bloodshed. We'll just surrender the city. It'll be fine. You guys can come back in a year with an army. Great. Sends them north to the Terrace people. End of the part. And then Sazed thinks to himself, we're all going to die. I'm just glad I could give them happiness with their marriage and their lives. Go live and never come back. That's his actual motive.
Which is just so precious. Thank you, Sazed. Like it's just so like he's just so like I don't know, tenderhearted with it, and
for the hopeful religious guy, he seems a little resigned to me. Like he does not have any faith in the Well of Ascension. Like he tells them, go get the Well of Ascension and then come back. And then in his internal dialogue, he says, we're all going to die. I'm just glad they can go live their lives.
that's fair. I was thinking of it in a way cuter way, but you raise a great point.
I think he has faith in Vin, in that in the scenes that we've seen with him, it's very strongly hinted that Sazed is starting to suspect that Vin is the hero of ages.
Yeah.
Either some kind of reincarnation or second coming of the hero of ages, or the first hero of ages was actually wrong and not the hero of ages, and Vin is the real hero of ages. I'm actually fascinated. Maybe we're going to get into this here with questions you might ask me, whether that is the plot of the next book or the 150 pages we have left in this one.
Mm.
Not sure. But I think Sazed has faith in that Vin is the hero of ages and will save the world someday. He just apparently seems to have given up on the Well of Ascension and is like, okay, I just need to get Vin out of here. She'll go save the world someday. I'm just gonna die. He's given up on the Well of Ascension, but has faith in the hero of ages.
Mm. Yeah.
Which, back to the whole titles of the book thing, confuses me.
All right. Are we ready for our? Do you have a theme for the part?
Wait, I before we jump into that, I have a little bit more.
Okay.
I actually do have to jump back to Zane for a final
Okay.
thing.
Uh-huh.
So last episode, I gave kind of a sweet little, you know, maybe Set had a redeeming quality. I'm not necessarily saying Zane is a redeeming quality, but I want to talk about the complexity a little bit of the character. And I think this is also aided by what Eliot said, I think, in the last episode of we see. I mean, we also find out that it was way worse than we thought, because last episode Zane extends a beat of ATM to Vin.
Yep.
And we talked about, that's a kind gesture, that's kind, it's valuable. He's, I don't know, maybe flirting with Vin, right? But Eliot pointed out that is also the only, like, if you will, positive relation exchange he has with his father, and how we kind of can see that maybe that's how he knows to show a positive interaction with others. We find out that that's a lump of lead and not actually valuable or good at all. It's actually very harmful for Vin. But I don't know. It's almost, I'm almost about to throw Zane a pity party. He like probably wins maybe the biggest victim of this book, of this story. In my opinion, the relationship with Straff is just terrible, terrifyingly terrible. And here is kind of his, like, attempt to, I guess, feel like he can save himself. He's a victim to this, and he's a victim to whatever this voice is in his head. It's like what we learn is an external force of some kind that is, like, terrorizing him, and then kind of is like, oh, you're dead. Guess what? You weren't actually crazy after all. And what I want to say about this is the dialogue. If you just read this, especially for the first time, go back and reread some of the dialogue that he has towards Vin. It is, I mean, I don't say that because it's like awe-inspiring. I mean, it's sad, it's heartbreakingly sad. It's, you can, especially listening to the audiobook, they do such a good job. It's like he's all that he's clinging on to is that Vin was supposed to save him, which is a false hope. Like that is not true. It is not truthful, but that's truth as far as Zane can see it. Given his circumstances, given his past, given his situation, as far as he can see, that is truth. We're talking about hope and truth, right? And for him, I think that was his hope, and that was the true thing he could see in his hope. And it is actively crumbled right in front of him. And he, like, can't really put anything together other than, like, you were supposed to save me. I just feel like there was so much weight to that, and so much, like, heartache I felt in that, of, like, I mean, poor guy there just wasn't much he could think of or do. I mean, obviously he tried to kill Vin, was unsuccessful. and all sorts of stuff there. But so that's not a sad. That's sad. It's depressing. It's probably not the prettiest note to end our episode on. But I think I really wanted to point that out, and I wanted to bring that up of just like how I guess how
Well,
sad it is. I feel really bad for Zane just as a character.
and and to maybe try and bring it full circle to tie it back to Sazed's discussion, you might even say that Vin is Zane's false religion. Vin is what Zane has tied his hope on, which, like you said, was not grounded in truth. It gave him that thing to live for, which was that dream of run fixing himself, and it ends in a incredibly tragic way, like you just said.
Yeah. I don't think Zane gets enough credit as a character, I think, in my brain at least. That I pretty easily dismiss Zane, but giving him more context like that, Paul, I do think there's some good complexity.
I I will weigh in with an opinion on that once I find out who the voice is
Mm,
and the relationship between the voice and Zane. If this voice is some kind of powerful being that has like actively manipulated Zane, taking control of him in a way, tortured him and told him he's crazy to use him for other stuff, yes, I will probably hop on the pity party for Zane. If this is something else that Zane has kind of willingly entered into or serves via a choice that he makes, I will be less inclined to give Zane a pass.
that's fair.
That's very fair.
Theme for the part, Elliot?
Theme for the part: marriage. Actually, not marriage. I feel like we skim past marriage just like the
Just
book
like they
does.
did. Yep.
It is a
Yeah, absolutely.
Sazed, what's the fastest marriage ceremony you know? Okay, that one. Go. Like I laughed out loud during the marriage part. It was sweet. It was actually, well done and not completely deserving of mocking, but goodness, that was the fastest shotgun wedding ever. My actual my actual theme for this part is one I'm hesitant to use because I feel like it's a theme of much more than just this part. And I may have even used it as a theme in the past in the previous book or this one. But the biggest thing that I saw kind of weaving through these chapters in part 4 was this discussion of trust. Mainly in Vin's mind, both with Elend and then also the lack of it with Zane.
Mm,
And then these comparisons that Vin makes back to Kelsier. Trevor, I think you pointed this out. The definitive moment for Vin is when she realizes she can trust Elend and not Zane. And she can trust Ellen because Ellen trusts her. And she specifically references Kelsier in that. Kelsier always had this, I think the word that I would use is faith. Kelsier had this faith in Vin where Vin got handed really important jobs right from the beginning. And Kelsier was like, you can impersonate a noble woman, go for it. And it wasn't necessarily that Kelsier like trusted that Vin wasn't gonna betray them necessarily, but he just decided he was gonna have faith in her. Kelsier said, you know what, Vin? I know you can do this. I'm putting my faith in you. And Elend has that quality. And Vin kind of discovers that in this chapter, this end one here, where she realizes that one of the qualities she admires most about Elend is his Kelsier like level of faith in other people, not just her even. Like Elend has faith in other people as well. He
right.
always assumes the best in those around to his detriment, as Tindwell will happily point out to us
Yes.
multiple times. Um, yeah, I think there were other bits of trust maybe kind of going through some of these features, but that was the biggest one. Vin and Elend, they truly trust each other enough that they are ready to get married and ride off into the sunset.
All right. I'm going to put predictions behind a Stormlight spoiler, because there are things that I don't think Ellie can talk about with full context.
Let me say one thing real quick before we dismiss any Mistborn only folks. I had a weird feeling at the end of this part 4. It almost felt like the book could have ended right there.
Yeah.
I am scratching my head that there are 150 to 200 pages left in this book, because that right there felt like the ending to a Sanderson book. It would have been, I would have looked back and said, "Oh, that was kind of a smallish Sanderlanche for Brandon." But goodness, I feel like we just hit a moment of almost closure on so much. And then I'm like looking ahead of the book, like, what where are we? We don't have enough time. Two things are going to happen. Crazy stuff is going to happen in the next 100 pages that 100 pages is not going to do justice to, or something is going to catch us, or I have no idea where we're going in these last 100 pages. I'm confused. This felt like it should have been the end.
Not only one, but we still got 2 more parts. We have the part 6,
Yeah.
the unheard of part 6 coming. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was all I wanted to say before we get into theories.
Okay, Stormlight spoilers. Let's talk about the voice in Zane's head. In full context, what is Eliot? Give me a good prediction on what exactly is happening.
Well, there's just so many things that I could point to that this could be. From the very moment we heard this voice in his head, insanity was not on my list of options. We know we have Spren, who bond with their Knights Radiant, who speak through thoughts. This could easily be some kind of spirit being on this planet. Like, I'm thinking small scale spirit being that is talking to him. There's one option. Sentient swords who love to just kill everyone who's around them. Option 2. 3, he could be the vessel of a shard. I mean, we know of large scale powerful beings that talk to people through dreams and thought and things like that. That could be a voice in his head. I feel like there's 2 or 3 other things that this could be. The amount of options that are out there in the Cosmere for specifically like investiture based beings that communicate through methods other than audible voice, to have something like that here on Scadrial talking to Zane, not only would that not surprise me in the least, I'd be rather surprised if there isn't something like that here on Scadrial. So that's why that line at the end of that is not a surprise to me in any way.
Is it possible that one of the metals he's burning is a drug that talks to him, like ATM or something?
Possible. I like the theory of the spike. I like the
Spike's
theory
talking to him?
of
Okay.
that there is something in the spike, or the spike creates some kind of link from him to another being. Now, again, what is the spike made of? Why does ingesting something in your stomach do something different than stabbing yourself with the spike? Like, lots of questions to figure out here, but I like the spike thought. We talked before about our shards that we have here on Scadrial. And we don't know a whole lot yet, other than there's likely 2, these 2, and we have names, Ruin and Preservation. That's about it. So that's all that I know at this point. But I will say, kill them would be something that a shard named Ruin says.
That's fair.
I mean, maybe ruin them would be better, but kill them is fairly close.
Ruin them. Ruin her.
I mean,
Ruin him.
Maybe he goes around just like kicking over piles of stones and stuff too. I don't know.
So the big reveal to me at the end of this part is the voice is deliberately being ambiguous to Zane until he knows he's gonna die, and then it's fully revealed that this is a fully sentient voice. Like, At
Right.
any point, the voice could talk to Zane in a full conversation, but he's choosing not to keep Zane in the dark, that he just hears this voice in his head that says kill him. And until this point, we thought that that's all it was. Now we know it's an actual voice, and it's just choosing to say kill him to stay ambiguous. Anything else?
It does smack of manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
It does. This is not a friendly spren who's trying to discover new powers and help you save the world. This is clearly somebody who wants to use you for your Mistborn abilities to further their agenda.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
We can talk about the flute next week.
Well, there's a cliffhanger for you.
That's a good idea.
Thank you for joining me, Paul and Eliot. We will be entering part 5 next week. See you then.
Let's do it.
Sayonara.